Marquez chasing 99 Lorenzo, and Lorenzo riding the wheels off it, trying to keep him at bay. Marquez wins again! Ready, steady, go!
More sport later with live coverage of the Rugby League World Cup as England face Fiji today from 2. And we've highlighted the weekend's other fixtures here on BBC One tomorrow at midnight.
Get your fundraising goodies from bbc.co.uk/Pudsey.
Well, now it's 1 o'clock, and with the lunchtime news on BBC One, Nicholas Owen.
Good afternoon. Rescue workers are trying to reach the areas of the Philippines worst hit by Typhoon Haiyan. The Red Cross estimates that more than 1,000 people may have been killed in one region alone after the massive storm swept through on Friday. Many remote communities are still cut off. Our correspondent John Donnison has the latest from Manila.
The day after the storm, and large parts of the central Philippines now underwater. On the island of Cebu, people doing their best to find their way home. Many stranded and desperate.
What will I do now? My house is destroyed. I didn't anticipate the winds to be that strong.
Typhoon Haiyan's 200-mile-an-hour winds have left a trail of destruction. Aid agencies are warning tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people may have lost their homes.
It's really terrible. The winds were so strong. I will have to rebuild my home. This is a tragedy.
And the number of casualties looks set to rise as more bodies are recovered. In many areas, power is down and communication is difficult. The relief effort is now underway. The military has begun to fly in aid.
Haiyan is off the scale that we use to estimate intensities from satellites. It's a threat to Vietnam, Hong Kong, and the rest of South China.
But the massive scale of the devastation means it could be several days before the full extent of the damage and the loss of life is known. John Donnison, BBC News, Manila.
Here, BT Sport is paying almost £900 million to broadcast Champions League football exclusively for 3 years from 2015. The record-breaking deal is for the rights to more than 350 matches, including the Europa League. It's worth more than double the present contract with ITV and Sky. Well, our chief sports correspondent Dan Rowan is at Old Trafford for us now. Dan, any more details on this?
Well, Nick, I think it's fair to say this could just be the most important, the most significant, the biggest result of the current football season. For years now, football fans have grown used to watching live Champions League matches from stadia like Old Trafford here behind me, home of Manchester United, on both Sky and, crucially, on terrestrial television in the form of ITV. But now we know from 2015 that will no longer be the case. BT Sport have gone all out to secure live and exclusive Champions League and Europa League rights. They will hope that that drives customers towards not just their TV services but also their telephone and broadband services too. Some will question whether or not they can afford it. It will be interesting to see how exactly they intend to recoup it. Fans will be disappointed that they have to spend even more. It'll be good news for the clubs in Europe and of course the players who can expect more wages. But I think also it's a bad day for both Sky and ITV.
Dan Rowan, thank you very much. The Prime Minister has said that the conviction of a Royal Marine for murdering an injured insurgent in Afghanistan should not besmirch the organisation's proud history. The Marine was found guilty yesterday at a court-martial and faces a life sentence. David Cameron said that it had been an appalling case, but it in no way represented the spirit and the history of the Royal Marines. Talks in Geneva over Iran's nuclear programme are continuing for a third unscheduled day. In exchange for tighter controls on its nuclear program, foreign ministers are trying to reach an interim deal that could relax some of the sanctions on Iran. But Israel has warned that the Iranian government is being offered too much for too little. Ahead of this morning's talks, the Foreign Secretary William Hague sounded upbeat.
These negotiations have made very good progress and continue to make good progress, I think it is fair to say, but there are still important issues to resolve. So clearly they are not over yet. We're going to have to give a lot of time and attention to those issues during the course of today.
The Foreign Secretary. Well, let's now go to our correspondent in Geneva, James Reynolds. Well, James, any thoughts on when we might see some real progress here?
Very difficult to tell, but we may know soon enough, because about half an hour ago, the most critical meeting of all began between Lady Ashton, the EU chief negotiator, John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, and also Iran's chief negotiator, Mohammad Javad Zarif. Those three held 5 hours of talks last night. They're getting into those talks again today, and it's become the forum for the most extensive high-level US-Iran direct talks since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. If there is to be an agreement, it may come from those talks, but other people are here as well. The Foreign Minister of Russia flew in from Moscow. The Chinese Foreign Minister is on his way. Will we get a deal today? Very, very difficult to tell. William Hague thinks perhaps not. Perhaps people might have to come here in the next few weeks. And the French Foreign Minister has said that he is not happy with the text of an initial first step agreement. So they continue to talk.
James Reynolds, thank you. A man has died and another is seriously injured after a shooting at a house in Leeds. The police said the men, aged 21 and 31, were found with shotgun wounds yesterday in the Wortley area of the city. Both were taken to hospital where the 21-year-old later died. Open auditions have started in Bristol for the 2 leading roles in the next Star Wars film. The original movie appeared in 1977 and the franchise went on to dominate at the box office. Today's auditions will be for Episode 7, due out in 2015. Spectacular it will surely be. That's it for now. Our next news bulletin on BBC One will be at 5:25. Now, though, on BBC One, it is time for the news where you are. Goodbye.
Good afternoon, welcome to BBC London News. The future of one of the capital's best-known nightclubs could be in doubt because of a housing development. That's the claim from bosses at the Ministry of Sound. The club says if the project goes ahead and new neighbours complain about the noise, it could mean the venue in Southwark might lose its licence and have to close down. This report by Amelia Papadopoulos does contain flashing images.
Once a derelict bus garage in South London, now one of the most famous nightclubs in the world. But the Ministry of Sound could be under threat if this building across the road becomes a high-rise residential block.
During the day, this doesn't feel different to any street in central London. But come Friday night, it's a very different story. And with the redevelopment just metres away, the club is worried that complaints from residents about noise could force them to close down. They're asking the mayor for protection.
We would like the people who are moving into those apartments, buying those apartments and renting those apartments, to sign a piece of paper that commits not to complain about Ministry of Sound going forward.
It's been a 4-year battle between the club and developers Oakmain. In March 2009, plans for a new block of 255 flats and 80 affordable homes were submitted. In October 2011, Southwark Council rejected the plans because they didn't meet affordable housing needs. 2 months later, the application was called in for mayoral review. The mayor makes his final decision on the 19th of November.
All in favour of preserving cultural icons everywhere in London, but unfortunately I can't really say much more about that particular decision at this moment.
The developers declined to comment, but Southwark Council wants both parties to coexist. One local estate agent sees no reason why they can't.
New blocks with double glazing wouldn't have an issue with noise at all, I'd say. The higher you are, I'll be surprised if anyone living in these flats would hear anything.
We've been here for 22 years. We want to be here for another 50, 100 years. We don't think that London wants to lose us.
The mayor will decide if the block will be converted into flats later this month. The club will also find out whether it will be granted protection from noise complaints. Amelia Papadopoulos, BBC London News.
It's been revealed that 4 men were arrested after being suspected of brandishing a gun at the Wimbledon champion Andy Murray. Police are looking into whether the men, who have been bailed, were actually autograph hunters with a tennis racket. The mix-up occurred on Wednesday night when 2 men knocked on the window of the tennis player's car. Thousands of people have lined the streets of the city for the Lord Mayor's show. It marks the inauguration of the 686th Lord Mayor, and for only the second time in 800 years, the post will be filled by a woman. Earlier, Fiona Woolf explained the importance of her new role.
Well, the role primarily is the promotion of actually the whole of the UK services sector, not just banking, financial services, and not just the City of London, Canary Wharf and the West End. For every one job there is in the square mile, there are 2 outside the square mile in the rest of the country.
The weather, it's going to be a very wet and chilly afternoon, I'm afraid, with some heavy showers around and a top temperature of 8 degrees Celsius. Well, that's it from us. We'll be back at just after 5:30 this evening with more from the BBC London newsroom. But for now, have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.
Hi there, a full UK weather forecast coming up in a moment. But first of all, I thought we'd start off with a look at Typhoon Haiyan that's been devastating the Philippines as it roared across the islands over the last day or so. Heading into the South China Sea now, where it will continue to work towards the coastline of Vietnam, the centre of the storm grinding along the coastline. So in a way that will put the brakes on the winds. The fiercest winds will begin to ease, but rain could be a bigger issue for Vietnam. 100 to 200 millimetres falling widely, 400 millimetres in some of the hills. That could cause some big flooding issues. This weekend, well, it's a weekend of 2 halves. We've got showers today, but tomorrow, much better day. It should be dry with more sunshine around. The radar picture shows where the showers today have been, mainly affecting western and southern parts of the British Isles. This clump of rain will continue to work eastwards, the back edge of it coming through the Twickenham area before long. So although we start off with a little bit of rain for the rugby union match between England and Argentina, the weather should gradually improve as we go through the second half. For the rest of us nationwide, well, we will see the back edge of that rain across the Midlands and central southern England. So a bit of sunshine coming out here late in the day, but it's only around 5 degrees across the South Midlands and temperatures not really rising much further than that. As we head through this afternoon, it will stay cold as that area of rain continues to work into East Anglia and the far southeast of England. Some heavy downpours for Sussex and Kent. North East England not doing too badly, along with eastern Scotland, some good sunny spells here. But further blustery showers coming into the western side of Scotland, still cold enough for some snow in the Scottish mountains. And there will be some further showers too, particularly for northern parts of Northern Ireland. A cool day here at just 6 degrees. After this morning's downpours for Wales and the southwest of England, well, a dry slice of weather for a time, but the next weather system not too far away, and that's heading in for this evening. So we'll start to see the cloud gathering, outbreaks of rain pushing in once again to parts of Wales and southwest England before moving into the South Midlands, central southern England and probably the far southeast during the second part of the night. Meanwhile, further north, a light northerly wind, a recipe with clear skies for a very cold night. Temperatures in the coldest spots could go down as low as -7 in parts of sheltered Scotland, and that's some of the lowest temperatures that we've seen so far this autumn season. So it will be a freezing cold start to Remembrance Sunday, but the air never really gets warm enough to make much in the way of clouds. So for most, it's sunshine from dawn till dusk. Temperatures into double figures in the south, but still pretty cool further north. And there will be a band of rain working in from the west late on in the day. That's the latest weather UK-wide, but we'll keep you updated on that typhoon on the BBC Weather website.
Well, next on BBC One, married couples on a bargain hunt in Anglesey.
The latest thing happening here is that President Morsi is addressing the nation right now. He is not going to resign.
Whatever the outcome, there are going to be a lot of very angry people on the streets.
Quote, a full military coup is underway.
What is confirmed is that over the past few minutes, army tanks have started deploying.
The democratic experiment here, for now anyway, is ending.
President Morsi has been toppled from power.
We've been waiting for this moment.
But very big question marks looming over the future of democracy in this country.
The BBC News Channel. Breaking news, developing stories.
sheep were the backbone of the British economy. British wool was clothing most of Europe.
The Living History team return, and they're turning the clock back to the 1500s.
Welcome to Tudor England, eh? We've got to get a plough into that soil in the next week or so, otherwise we're not going to get a crop.
Tudor Monastery Farm, Wednesday at 9 on BBC Two.
Broadway, New York, home of the songs that have entertained and inspired us for generations, most of which were written by Jewish songwriters.
Life can be bright in America.
Imagine Broadway musicals, a Jewish legacy. Tuesday at 10:35 on BBC One and BBC One HD.
So England face Fiji in the Rugby League World Cup, live on BBC One in 45 minutes. First, all the fun of the fair with a match made in heaven.
Our two teams today, a husband